Next, I'd like to show you another example of using filter, this time with some DOM elements. We'll actually combine map and filter to do a little, I don't know if I would call it fun, but to play around with some of these to-dos that I have written out. I have some different to-dos. Each one consists of an li. In that li, we have a checkbox and then some text. And some of those checkboxes are checked already. It's just an attribute you can pass into the input. It is a Boolean attribute, one of the few, where you don't have to pass in some corresponding value, like we do for type. So it's just checked. And if it's not present, then the checkbox is not checked. So if I want to select all of the checkboxes, we know how to do that using query selector. Why don't we start there? Select every input, type equals checkbox. So from our app.js, we could do document.querySelector all. We want input where type equals checkbox. And you've got to pay attention to our quotation marks. I'm using single on the outside, double on the inside. And I'll save this to a variable called all checkboxes. Okay. Now, if I want to filter out only the ones that are actually checked, I could do that using filter. I could create a new array. The only problem, as we've seen before, if we look at all checkboxes, I need to refresh my page to get that code to run. If we look at all checkboxes, it's not an array. Once again, I cannot use filter. So if I convert it to an array, I could do all checkboxes and pass it into array.from, which we saw a couple videos ago. It's an easy way to make an array. From all checkboxes, I now have an array, some of which are checked and some of which are not. And the way we detect or we determine if a given element, a checkbox, is checked or not, let's take the first one. So that's the first one right there. There is a property called checked. It's true. If I look at the second one, index of 1, it's false. So I could use filter to create an array of only the checked checkboxes. So let's make a variable called const checked equals all checkboxes, but I can't filter as we saw just a moment ago. I need to call array.from or some other way of converting to an array. Array.from all checkboxes.filter. Function, let's go with box as our parameter name, and we can simply return box.checked. Okay, so this should give me an array of all boxes who are checked. Let's look at checked. We have 3 of them. If I hover, it should be enough to show us. Okay, so the left one, or on the left side, the first one is highlighted. Then cast levitation spell and bring home pet kangaroo. Very productive day. I took out my trash, casted a levitation spell, brought home my pet kangaroo. Great. I used query selector to select all checkboxes, and then I made an array containing the 3 that are checked. And that's good enough, I guess. But what if I wanted to know which things I've done? I want an array that says, take out my trash, cast levitation spell, and bring home pet kangaroo. Maybe there's a nice feature that I'm creating for this to-do list that will every day at the end of the day send me an email telling me how many items I did that day and what I did. So we could figure out the number. We could just do checked.length and say, all right, you did 3 items today. Here's your email. Congratulations. But if I wanted to provide a recap of the actual text of what we did, I could use map if I want an array. I have an array of the individual checked boxes. I can then map over them and then figure out the parent element, which if we go back here, each array element there in that checked array is one of these checkboxes. I could figure out the parent element. We have a property, .parent element, and then get the inner text. I could also use one of the sibling properties to figure out the sibling, because this text node here is a sibling of the input, but I'll do the inner text version. So it would just be checked, which is an array, .map, function, let's go with checkbox as our parameter name, return checkbox.parent element .inner text. And if I save this, we'll call this const completed items. This should work. We'll see. So we have our array of checked boxes. Then for each one, we are creating a new array off of those 3 checked items, where we access the parent element, which is an li, and get the inner text from that parent, and we return that. And map will create a new array with whatever we return from here. Moment of truth over here. Oh boy, let's look at completed items. There we go. Take out trash, cast levitation spell, bring home pet kangaroo. And if I were to update this and complete tell my pet kangaroo a bedtime story, let's make that checked. I run that code again. If we look at checked, it now contains 4 inputs, and completed items has 4 strings, 4 pieces of text that I've done. So I could now send that recap email, what a productive day, ended with telling my pet kangaroo a bedtime story. So we could do this in multiple steps like you see here, but I could also define a function, and I can chain these together. I'll show that very briefly before we wrap up here. So let's call this function get, how about extract completed to-dos? And we won't pass anything in. It will just work on the DOM and do the same thing every time. We'll copy this over, array.from, all checkboxes.filter, and then we can just chain on the .map. Because this returns an array, whoops, not there. Right here, I can call .map on that. So I'm getting all checkboxes. I do need to make sure I move this in there. So I select all checkboxes, regardless of whether they're checked or not. Then I turn that into an array. I filter to get the checked boxes, and then I map over those checked boxes to get the parent element's inner text, and then I need to return something, which I could actually just do this, return the result of this whole thing. Okay, let's see if it works. Refresh my page. I'll call extract completed to-dos. Perfect, it works. And if I call it again, I check more. Now we get 6. If I only have one thing I've done, how about floss my cat's teeth? We get that 1 item. Definitely a silly example, but a situation where we're combining things, map and filter, to find some information. While the to-dos are a little fantastical, I guess, unfortunately, I can't teleport to Australia, and most unfortunately, I don't have a pet kangaroo that I can tell bedtime stories to. I'm hoping you can see that whatever the context is, combining these tools like map and filter together can really help you extract or manipulate or find pieces of information and then turn them into some other end result, like an array over here. And I could do something with this. I could make new elements with this. I could send an email. These methods on their own are useful, but once you start combining them, you can do a whole lot more. Okay, so next up, we're going to implement filter, and then we'll move on to our next batch of methods.